Harper Chen adjusted her black dress for the 10th time, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of the upscale restaurant. The engagement party was in full swing outside, with laughter and champagne glasses clinking, but all she could think about was the text message she'd received 3 hours ago. Her ex-boyfriend, Marcus, had sent her a photo of himself and his new girlfriend at some tropical resort, with the caption, "Living my best life. Thanks for setting me free, Harper." She gripped the marble countertop until her knuckles turned white. 2 years of her life wasted on someone who claimed he needed to find himself only to find himself in another woman's arms 3 weeks later. The worst part was that Harper had genuinely believed they were taking a break, not breaking up permanently. "Pull yourself together," she whispered to her reflection. "You're here for Emma, not for self-pity." Emma had been her best friend since college. Tonight was supposed to be about celebrating her engagement to David. Harper had helped plan this entire party, choosing the venue, coordinating with the caterer, and even designing the custom invitations. She couldn't let her personal drama ruin Emma's special night. She walked back into the main dining area, where fairy lights twinkled overhead and soft jazz music played in the background. The restaurant had been transformed into something magical, with white roses and golden accents everywhere. Emma looked radiant in her flowing cream dress, practically glowing as she showed off her engagement ring to anyone who would look. Harper grabbed a glass of wine from a passing waiter and plastered on her best smile. She made small talk with Emma's relatives, complimented the decorations she'd helped choose, pretended that her heart wasn't slowly cracking every time someone asked about her love life. "Harper, sweetie, when are you going to settle down?" asked Emma's Aunt Margaret, a woman who seemed to believe that a woman's worth was measured solely by her relationship status. "You're almost 26, time is ticking. I'm focusing on my art right now," Harper replied, taking a large sip of wine. "My career is very demanding." This was partially true. Harper was indeed an artist, but demanding career was a generous way to describe her part-time job at Moonbeam Coffee and her struggling attempts to sell paintings at local galleries. She'd sold exactly 3 pieces in the past year, barely enough to cover her art supplies. As the evening progressed, Harper found herself drinking more than she usually did. The wine helped numb the sting of well-meaning questions about her love, life, and the constant reminders of what she didn't have. By 10 o'clock, she was definitely tipsy, laughing a little too loudly at jokes and swaying slightly when she walked. She decided to step outside for some fresh air, hoping the cool evening breeze would help clear her head. The restaurant had a small outdoor patio area with a few tables scattered around, most of them empty since it was getting late.
Oh.
That's when she noticed him. A man sat alone at a corner table, nursing what looked like a cup of coffee. He was dressed simply in dark jeans and a gray sweater. Nothing fancy, but something about him caught her attention. Maybe it was the way he sat so still, like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Or maybe it was how he seemed, completely disconnected from the celebration happening inside, as if he existed in his own quiet bubble. Harper, emboldened by wine and curiosity, grabbed her glass and walked over to him. "Mind if I join you? The party's getting a bit much." The man looked up, and Harper nearly gasped. He had the most intense, dark eyes she'd ever seen, framed by thick lashes and set in a face that belonged on magazine covers. His dark hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. And there was a 5 o'clock shadow that made him look mysteriously rugged. "I'm not really part of the party," he said quietly, his voice deep and smooth. I'm just waiting for someone." "Well, whoever they are, they're missing out on good company," Harper said, settling into the chair across from him without really asking permission. "I'm Harper, by the way, professional party planner and current escapee from social obligations." Small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "James, professional, currently unemployed." "Unemployed can be liberating," Harper said, raising her wine glass, "to freedom from expectations." James raised his coffee cup in response. 2 unexpected encounters. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Harper studied his face. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. He just had one of those faces that reminded you of someone else. "So what brings you to this particular restaurant on this particular night?" Harper asked, realizing she was probably being too forward but not particularly caring. "I was supposed to meet my lawyer here," James said, glancing at his watch. "But he's running late. Very late. I was about to leave when I saw you storm out of the party looking like you wanted to fight someone." Harper laughed, a real laugh this time. "Was it that obvious?" "I thought I was being subtle." "About as subtle as a hurricane," James said, and his smile reached his eyes this time. "Want to talk about it?" Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the fact that he was a complete stranger who would never judge her or spread gossip. But Harper found herself opening up. She told him about Marcus, about the breakup that wasn't really a breakup, about feeling like everyone her age was moving forward while she was stuck in place. "I'm 25 years old. I feel like I'm falling behind in some race I didn't even know I was running," she said, twirling her wine glass between her fingers. "Everyone's getting engaged, buying houses, starting careers that matter. Here I am, serving lattes and painting pictures that nobody wants to buy." James listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or asking gentle questions. There was something about his presence that made her feel heard, really heard, for the first time in months. "You know what I think?" James said finally.
I
"Think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Sometimes life looks like it's falling apart when it's actually falling into place." "That's very philosophical for someone I just met," Harper said, studying his face again. "You sure you're just unemployed? Sound like you've got some life experience under your belt?" Before James could answer, Harper stood up to gesture dramatically about her life philosophy and promptly knocked over her wine glass. The red liquid splashed across the table and directly onto James' gray sweater. "Oh no. Oh my God. I'm so sorry." Harper grabbed napkins and started frantically dabbing at his sweater, which only seemed to make the stain worse. "I'm such a klutz. When I drink, this is why I usually stick to coffee." "It's okay," James said, catching her hands gently to stop her frantic cleaning attempts. "It's just a sweater. But it's ruined. It looks expensive, even if you say you're unemployed. Let me pay for dry cleaning, or I can buy you a new one, or Harper." Its voice was calm and steady. "It's really okay." She looked up at him, suddenly very aware that he was holding her hands and that they were sitting much closer than strangers probably should. His eyes were even more intense up close, and she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and sophisticated. "I should probably get back to the party," she said, but she didn't move away. "Probably," he agreed, but he didn't let go of her hands either. They stayed like that for a moment that felt much longer than it actually was. And Harper felt something shift in the air between them. It was like the moment before lightning strikes. When everything is charged and waiting, then the restaurant door opened and Emma's voice carried across the patio. "Harper, are you out here? We're about to cut the cake." The spell broke, and James released her hands. Harper stood up quickly, smoothing down her dress and trying to look like she hadn't just been having a moment with a complete stranger. "I have to go," she said, backing toward the door. "But thank you for listening, I mean. And again, I'm really sorry about your sweater." "Wait," James called after her. "Will I see you again?" Harper paused at the door, looking back at him sitting alone at the wine-stained table. "I don't know. Do you wanna?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I really do." "Then maybe you will," Harper said with a smile, and disappeared back into the party. She spent the rest of the evening thinking about dark eyes and gentle hands, wondering who James really was and why a simple conversation with a stranger had felt more meaningful than 2 years with Marcus. She helped Emma cut the cake, posed for photos, and said all the right things. But part of her mind was still on the patio with the mysterious man who had listened to her like her words actually mattered. When she finally made it home to her tiny studio apartment at nearly midnight, Harper kicked off her heels and replayed the entire encounter in her mind. She'd been so focused on what she'd lost with Marcus, she hadn't even considered what she might find instead. For the first time in weeks, Harper fell asleep smiling, not knowing that her life had just taken a turn that would change everything. She thought she knew about love, trust, and the difference between what someone appears to be and who they really are. 3 weeks later, Harper was elbowed deep in coffee grounds and running late for her art class when her phone buzzed with a text that made her blood run cold. It was from Marcus, accompanied by a photo that felt like a punch to her gut. The image showed Marcus down on one knee in what looked like a fancy restaurant, holding out a ring box to his new girlfriend. The caption read, "She said yes. Wedding this Saturday at the Grandview Hotel. Hope you can make it, Harper." No hard feelings, right? Harper stared at the phone screen, her hands shaking slightly. Saturday, as in 4 days from now. Marcus was getting married 4 days from now to the woman he'd supposedly just met, and he had the audacity to invite her like they were old friends who'd simply grown apart. "Everything okay, Harper?" asked Jenna, her co-worker at Moonbeam Coffee. "Look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Harper muttered, showing Jenna the phone. "I've seen my ex-boyfriend's engagement announcement," Jenna whistled low. "Wow, that's fast. How long were you two together?" 2 years? "We took a break 2 months ago because he needed to find himself." Harper made air quotes with her coffee-stained fingers. Apparently he found himself at the altar. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed, and Harper looked up to see a familiar figure walking in. Her heart did a little skip as she recognized James, the mysterious man from the engagement party. He looked different in the daylight streaming through the windows. His dark hair was neatly styled, and he was wearing a simple but well-fitted navy blue jacket over dark jeans. "Harper," he seemed genuinely surprised to see her. "I was hoping I might run into you again, but I didn't expect it to be here." "Welcome to my glamorous day job," Harper said, gesturing at her coffee-stained apron and the chaos behind the counter. "What can I get you?" Warning, I make terrible small talk when I'm having an emotional crisis. James stepped up to the counter, studying her face with those intense dark eyes. "What kind of emotional crisis are we talking about?" Before Harper could stop herself, she was showing him Marcus's text and photo, explaining the whole ridiculous situation while she mechanically prepared his coffee order. James listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that showed he was really paying attention. "So, let me get this straight," James said when she finished her story. "Your ex-boyfriend, who claimed he needed space to grow as a person, is marrying someone he just met, and he invited you to the wedding." "That about sums it up," Harper said, handing him his coffee. "The worst part is, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'll show up alone. Everyone will whisper about poor Harper, who couldn't keep her man. And Marcus will give some speech about how grateful he is that I set him free to find true love. So don't go alone." Harper looked up from cleaning the espresso machine. "What?" "Don't go alone," James repeated, taking a sip of his coffee. "Go with a date. Someone who'll make Marcus realize what an idiot he is." "Right, because I have so many options," Harper said sarcastically. "My dating life has been about as successful as my art career lately." James was quiet for a moment, and Harper could see him thinking about something. Finally, he set down his coffee cup and looked directly at her. "I'll do it." "Do what?" "Be your date. To the wedding." Harper nearly dropped the towel she was holding. "You serious?" "Completely serious. I clean up well. I can make conversation, and I have absolutely nothing else to do on Saturday." "James, you don't understand. This isn't just any wedding. It's my ex-boyfriend's wedding. There will be people there who know me, who know our history. They'll ask questions about you, about us, about how we met. Us. So we'll come up with a story," James said simply. "We already have one, actually. We met at an engagement party 3 weeks ago. You spilled wine on me. We talked all night, and it was love at first sight." Harper stared at him. "You're actually serious about this? Dead serious?" "Look, Harper, I don't know you very well, but I can tell you're a good person. You deserve better than showing up to that wedding alone and letting people pity you. And honestly, I could use the distraction myself." "What kind of distraction?" James hesitated, and Harper caught a glimpse of something vulnerable in his expression. "Let's just say I'm going through my own complicated situation right now. Pretending to be someone's devoted boyfriend for one evening sounds a lot easier than dealing with my real life." Harper considered his offer. It was crazy, absolutely insane. To show up to Marcus's wedding with a man she barely knew, but it was also tempting. The idea of walking into that hotel ballroom with someone like James on her arm Someone who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine and actually listened when she talked. You'd really do this for me? Even though we're practically strangers? Sometimes? Strangers are the best people to help with these kinds of situations, James said. No complicated history, no expectations beyond the immediate goal, which is making your ex-boyfriend regret every decision that led him away from you. Harper felt a smile tugging at her lips. When you put it like that, is that a yes? She took a deep breath. Okay, yes, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we need to get our story straight. Details, timeline, how serious we are. Second, you let me buy you a proper outfit. I'm not showing up to this thing with my fake boyfriend looking like he shops at thrift stores. James raised an eyebrow. What's wrong with thrift stores? Nothing? Normally? But this is psychological warfare, and I need you looking like you could buy and sell everyone in that room. And your third condition? Harper hesitated. After Saturday, we go back to being strangers. No expectations, no complications. This is just one night of pretending, and then we both go back to our real lives. Something flickered across James's face, too quick for Harper to identify. Understood. One night only. They spent the next hour sitting at a corner table in the coffee shop, creating their fictional relationship. James was surprisingly good at coming up with believable details. They'd been dating for 3 weeks. He worked in consulting, vague enough to avoid too many questions, and they were taking things slow, but were clearly smitten with each other. What about the wine incident? Harper asked. That actually happened? We'll say it was charming. That your clumsiness was what first caught my attention, and the way you fussed over my sweater showed me how caring you are. You're good at this, Harper said, studying his face. Almost too good. Are you sure you're not a professional actor or something? Just someone who's had to navigate complicated social situations before, James said evasively. That evening, Harper took James shopping at the nicest department store she could afford. She watched him try on suits and dress shirts, amazed at how different he looked in expensive clothes. The gray suit he finally chose fit him like it was custom-made. And when he emerged from the dressing room, Harper had to remind herself to breathe. How do I look? James asked, adjusting his tie. Like every woman at that wedding is going to hate me, Harper said honestly. James smiled, and Harper felt that same electric charge she'd experienced on the restaurant patio. This was dangerous territory, getting attached to someone who was only playing a role. Your turn, James said. What are you wearing? I have a dress, Harper said quickly. Nothing fancy, but it'll do. Harper. James's voice was gentle but firm. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Let me buy you a dress. Absolutely not. I'm already letting you spend Saturday night pretending to be in love with me, not letting you spend money on me too. They argued about it for 20 minutes right there in the middle of the store, until James finally convinced her by pointing out that couples shop for each other all the time. And if they were going to sell this relationship, they needed to look like they belonged together. Harper found herself in the women's section, trying on dresses that cost more than her monthly rent. When she emerged from the fitting room in a deep emerald green dress that hugged her curves and made her skin glow, James went very still. That's the one, he said quietly. It's too expensive. It's perfect. We'll take it. As they left the store with their purchases, Harper felt like she was living someone else's life. Designer clothes, a handsome fake boyfriend, and a plan for revenge. It was like something out of a movie. James, she said as they walked to the parking garage, why are you really doing this for me? He stopped walking and turned to face her. Because when I met you 3 weeks ago, you were the first person in months who talked to me like I was just a regular person. Not because of what I could do for them, or what they could get from me, but just because you needed someone to listen. That meant something to me. Harper felt her heart do that little skip again. That still doesn't explain why you're going to such lengths to help me. James was quiet for a long moment. Maybe because I know what it feels like to have people underestimate you. Feel like you're not living up to everyone else's expectations of what your life should look like. There was something in his voice. That made Harper want to ask more questions, but she remembered their agreement. One night, no complications, and then back to their separate lives. Well, she said instead, I promise to make it worth your while. By Sunday morning, Marcus is going to be convinced that letting me go was the biggest mistake of his life. ... Don't think that'll be hard to believe, James said softly as Harper fell asleep that night. She tried to ignore the voice in her head that whispered she was already in too deep, that fake relationships had a way of feeling real when you weren't paying attention. She told herself it was just one night of pretending, and that she was strong enough to walk away when it was over. She had no idea that James was lying awake in his own bed across town, wondering how he was going to survive a night of pretending. To be in love with a woman who was already making him forget why falling for real was such a dangerous idea. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that made Harper irrationally angry. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and the whole world seemed determined to celebrate Marcus's wedding. While she prepared for what felt like the performance of her life, Harper stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying makeup with shaky hands. The emerald dress hung on the back of her door, looking beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. She'd practiced walking in the matching heels James had insisted on buying. She'd rehearsed their cover story until she could recite it in her sleep. Her phone buzzed with a text from James, ready to make some people jealous. Despite her nerves, Harper smiled. Over the past few days, they'd texted back and forth, fine-tuning their story and getting to know each other better. She'd learned that he had a dry sense of humor, that he read voraciously, and that he had strong opinions about coffee. What she hadn't learned was anything substantial about his background, his family, or why he seemed to have unlimited free time for someone who claimed to be unemployed. Harper, as ready as I'll ever be. Pick me up in an hour, James. Wouldn't dream of being late for our debut performance. An hour later, Harper opened her apartment door to find James standing in the hallway, and her breath caught in her throat. The gray suit transformed him completely. He looked sophisticated, powerful, and devastatingly handsome. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and he was holding a small bouquet of white roses. "For my beautiful girlfriend," he said with a smile. That looked completely genuine. "James, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Boyfriends bring flowers. It's in the handbook." Harper laughed, accepting the roses and trying to ignore how natural it felt when he leaned down to kiss her cheek. His cologne was the same woodsy scent she remembered from the restaurant, and being close to him made her feel slightly dizzy. "You look incredible," James said, studying her face. "Marcus is going to kick himself." "That's the plan," Harper said. But her voice came out softer than she intended. They drove to the Grandview Hotel in James's car, which Harper was surprised to discover was a sleek black BMW. "Nice car for someone who's unemployed," she commented. "I'm good with money," James said evasively, and Harper decided not to push. Everyone had secrets. The Grandview Hotel was exactly the kind of place Marcus would choose for his wedding. Expensive, traditional, and designed to impress. The lobby was full of wedding guests in their finest attire, and Harper recognized several faces from her past relationship with Marcus. "Ready?" James asked, offering her his arm. "Let's do this." They walked into the reception area together, and Harper immediately felt the stares. She kept her chin up and her smile bright, acutely aware of James's warm presence beside her. He played his part perfectly, keeping one hand on the small of her back and looking at her with just the right amount of adoration. "Harper." The voice belonged to Sandra, one of Marcus's cousins. "I'm so surprised to see you here." "And who is this gorgeous man?" "Sandra, this is my boyfriend James," Harper said, surprised by how easily the words rolled off her tongue. "Sandra is Marcus's cousin." James extended his hand with a charming smile. "Nice to meet you, Sandra. Harper's told me so much about Marcus's family. How long have you two been together?" Sandra asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. "About a month now," Harper said. "We met at an engagement party, and it was pretty much love at first sight." James squeezed her waist gently. "Harper spilled wine all over me, and I knew she was the one." Sandra laughed. "How romantic. And what do you do, James?" "I'm in consulting," James said smoothly. "Technology sector. It's pretty boring stuff, really." They made small talk for a few more minutes before Sandra excused herself, probably to spread the news about Harper's mysterious new boyfriend. As they walked toward their assigned table, Harper felt a mixture of pride and guilt. The pride came from the envious look she was getting from other women. The guilt came from how easy it was to pretend with James, how right it felt to have his arm around her. "You're a natural at this," Harper whispered as they found their seats. "So are you. We make a good team." The ceremony was beautiful, Harper had to admit. Marcus looked handsome in his tuxedo, and his bride, Rebecca, was radiant in a dress that probably cost more than Harper's car. As they exchanged vows about eternal love and devotion, Harper found herself thinking about the 2 years she'd spent with Marcus, wondering if he'd ever looked at her the way he was looking at Rebecca now. James seemed to sense her mood shift. He reached over and took her hand, intertwining their fingers and rubbing his thumb gently across her knuckles. The gesture was so intimate and comforting that Harper had to remind herself it was all for show. During the reception, they danced, laughed, and played their parts perfectly.
Oh.
James was charming with the other guests, attentive to Harper, and every inch the devoted boyfriend. Several people commented on what a lovely couple they made, and Harper found herself wishing it were real. The trouble started during the speeches. Marcus stood up with his champagne glass, looking confident and happy. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate the beginning of Rebecca's and my life together. You know, a year ago, I thought I knew what love was. I was in a relationship that was comfortable, familiar, but ultimately not right for either of us." Harper felt her cheeks burn as people glanced in her direction. Marcus was actually talking about their relationship in his wedding speech. "Sometimes you have to have the courage to let go of what's safe to find what's extraordinary," Marcus continued. "Rebecca showed me what real love feels like, passionate, effortless, meant to be. I'm grateful for my past because it led me to my future." The crowd applauded, but Harper felt humiliated. Marcus had just dismissed their entire relationship as comfortable, and not right in front of everyone they knew. James leaned close to her ear. "Breathe," he whispered. "Don't give him the satisfaction of seeing you upset." But Harper was beyond upset. She was furious. And with a sir with sense with sources solemns and so what's "I'd like to say something too," Harper announced, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. James caught her wrist gently. "Harper, what are you doing?"
Something I should have done a long time ago," she said, pulling away from him. "Marcus."
"Congratulations on finding your extraordinary love," Harper said, raising her own champagne glass. "You're absolutely right that sometimes you have to let go of what's comfortable to find what's meant to be." She turned to look at James, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I want to thank you, actually, for setting me free to find this man. James has shown me what it feels like to be with someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves me exactly as I am. So here's to letting go of the wrong person so you can find the right one." The room erupted in applause, and Harper sat down, her heart pounding. She'd meant every word, she realized. Somewhere over the past month, her fake feelings for James had become terrifyingly real. James was staring at her with an intense expression. "Harper, I need some air," she said quickly, standing up and heading for the terrace. Outside, the cool evening breeze helped calm her racing heart. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the city lights and trying to process what had just happened. She'd stood up in front of everyone and basically declared her love for a man who was only pretending to care about her. That was quite a speech. Harper turned to find Rebecca, the bride, standing behind her. She looked beautiful but tired, and there was something in her eyes that Harper couldn't identify. "I'm sorry if I made a scene," Harper said. "To take attention away from your special day?" "Actually, I'm glad you did it," Rebecca said, surprising her. "Can I tell you something? Marcus talks about you constantly. How smart you are, how talented, how you never needed him the way I do. He married me, but he's not over you, Harper. He probably never will be. Harper stared at her. Rebecca, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. One tonight, and your boyfriend is completely in love with you. The way he looks at you, the way he reacted when you stood up to give that speech, that's not acting. Before Harper could respond, Rebecca walked back inside, leaving Harper alone with her thoughts and a growing realization that she was in way over her head. A few minutes later, James found her on the terrace. Are you okay? He asked softly. I think I just made everything more complicated, Harper said, not turning around. How so? She took a deep breath. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. James was quiet for so long that Harper finally turned to look at him. His expression was unreadable in the dim light. Harper, he said finally, there's something I need to tell you. Something in his tone made her stomach drop. What? James ran a hand through his hair, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. My name's James, but my last name isn't. What I told you? It's Morrison. James Morrison. Harper frowned. Okay, why does that matter? Because Morrison Tech is my company. I'm not unemployed, Harper. I'm a billionaire. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Harper gripped the terrace railing to steady herself. What? I was supposed to meet with my lawyers that night we met because my company is going public next month. There's been some controversy, some bad publicity about my business practices. I've been laying low, trying to stay out of the spotlight until things calm down. Harper stared at him, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The expensive car, the easy confidence, the way he'd insisted on buying her dress without seeming to care about the cost. You lied to me, she said quietly. I didn't lie exactly. I just didn't tell you the whole truth. You let me buy you coffee. You let me worry about paying for dry cleaning on your sweater. You sat there while I complained about being broke and struggling, and you're a billionaire? Harper, please let me explain. Explain what? That you thought it would be fun to play poor for a while? That you were slumming it with the struggling? Artist, it wasn't like that, James said desperately. When I met you, you treated me like a regular person. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Everyone I meet wants something from me. Money, connections, opportunities. But you just wanted someone to listen, so you decided to keep lying. I was going to tell you after the wedding. I was going to tell you everything and ask if you wanted to try making this real. Harper laughed bitterly. Real? James, nothing about this has been real. I poured my heart out to a stranger, and it turns out the stranger was lying about everything that mattered. Not everything, James said, stepping closer. My feelings for you are real, Harper. Completely real? How would I know? Would I ever know what's real with you? James looked like she'd slapped him, because I'm telling you now. I'm risking everything to tell you the truth. You're risking nothing, Harper said, backing away from him. You have millions of dollars in a company and a whole life I know nothing about. I'm risking my heart on someone who doesn't exist. I exist, Harper. I'm standing right here. No, you're not. The man I fell for doesn't exist. It was just a character you were playing. Harper turned and walked back into the ballroom, leaving James standing alone on the terrace. She grabbed her purse from their table, ignored the curious stares from other guests, and walked straight out of the hotel. She was halfway home in a taxi before she realized she was crying. Over the next week, James called and texted constantly, but Harper ignored every attempt at communication. She threw herself into her art, painting angry, abstract pieces that somehow captured all the emotion she couldn't put into words. Emma came by with ice cream and wine, ready to hear all about the wedding and Harper's mysterious boyfriend. So where is he? Emma asked, looking around the apartment. I was hoping to meet the man who swept my best friend off her feet. He's not who I thought he was, Harper said simply. Honey, nobody ever is. That's what makes relationships interesting. Harper told Emma everything, the fake relationship, the wedding, the revelation about James's identity. Emma listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions or making sympathetic noises. So let me get this straight, Emma said when Harper finished. A gorgeous billionaire fell in love with you while pretending to be your fake boyfriend, and you're upset because he didn't tell you he was rich? It's not about the money, Emma. It's about the lies. How can I trust someone who hid something that fundamental about himself? Maybe because he was scared you'd treat him differently if you knew. Harper set down her wineglass harder than necessary. That's exactly my point. He made that decision for me. He decided I couldn't handle the truth. Or maybe he decided he couldn't handle losing you. Before Harper could respond, there was a knock at her door. She looked through the peephole and saw James standing in the hallway holding what looked like a canvas. I'm not talking to him, Harper said, backing away from the door. Yes, you are, Emma said firmly, walking over and opening the door before Harper could stop her. Hi, you must be Emma, James said politely. I'm James. I was hoping I could talk. To Harper, she's being stubborn, Emma said, completely ignoring Harper's glare. But she's also miserable, so maybe you two can figure this out. I'll be in the kitchen making more popcorn. James stepped into the apartment, still holding the canvas. He looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that made Harper's chest ache. I brought you something, he said, turning the canvas around. Harper gasped. It was one of her paintings, the abstract piece she'd been working on before they met. It's the one that had been sitting unfinished in her studio. But now it was complete, with additional layers and colors that somehow made the whole piece come alive. How did you? I bought it from the gallery where you had it on consignment. The owner said you'd been struggling with how to finish it. James set the painting down carefully. I hope you don't mind that I added to it. I couldn't sleep, and I kept thinking about colors and emotions and how to show someone that you understand what they're trying to say. Harper stared at the painting. The additions were perfect, transforming her work from something frustrated and incomplete into something beautiful and whole.